The holiday season can be a stressful time, but be careful. Studies show stress makes you age faster right down to your cells. Here with us to discuss stress and its effects on physical aging is Thea Singer, author of the book Stress Less. Thanks so much for joining us, Thea.
Thank you so much for having me here.
So tell us how stress is related to physical aging.
Okay. We've heard forever that stress can make us sick. It can contribute to cardiovascular disease, to dampened immune system, but new science is showing us that it can actually physically age us all the way down to our cells. Wow. I'm going to use my little shoelace prop here to explain that. In our cells, we have a nucleus. In the nucleus are our chromosomes. They're like two worms crossed at the middle. On our chromosomes lies our DNA, our genetic material, the very substance of our being. At the ends of our chromosomes are these little caps, just like the caps on the end of this shoelace. They're called telomeres. Just like these plastic tips on the shoelace keep the shoelace from fraying, the telomeres on the ends of our chromosomes keep our DNA safe. Now, every time a cell divides, the telomere gets a little bit shorter, and this is why scientists look at length of telomeres as a marker of biological aging.
Now does stress also make the telomeres shorter?
Well, this is where the really exciting revolutionary research came in. Alyssa Epel at UCSF, she's a health psychologist, and Nobel Prize winner Elizabeth Blackburn did a study. They looked at these moms who were caregivers of chronically ill children, and which is an incredibly stressful situation to be under. They gave them a test. It's called the Perceived Stress Test, which is in my book, to see how they perceived their situations regarding stress. And what they found was the moms who perceived themselves as being under the most stress had telomeres that were shorter by the equivalent of 10 years than those who perceive themselves as being under the least stress.
That is fascinating. But what I want to point out and talk about next is that you talk about perceived stress. So
Absolutely.
Does that mean that all stress is relative?
What that means is that there's really no such thing as objective stress. Think about it.
Right.
You know, you probably get less stressed out in front of this camera than I get stressed out. It all has to do with perceptions.
Right.
And while we can't change our circumstances, what we can change is the way we see the world. We can alter our perceptions.
Well, let me just throw something out hypothetically. I would imagine that being in a life or death situation is an objectively stressful situation.
Well, here's the thing about being in a life or death situation. That's called acute stress.
Okay.
That's actually a good kind of stress. Because what happens when you're in that life or death situation? You need to flee.
Right.
Okay, or you need to fight. And so your stress hormones rev up, your cardiovascular system, your heart beats, your brain gets more acute, you see better. So that's a good kind of stress. That lasts for just a short period of time. But again, you have to remember.
It revs up your system.
It revs up your
ready
system.
To go.
That's good. You're Juliet waiting in the wings. You're going to go on and see Romeo.
Adrenaline pumping.
Absolutely. As Bruce McEwen, who's a stress guru, and he's at the Rockefeller University, told me, without stress, we'd be dead.
Right.
We don't want to get rid of stress. What's bad is when it's chronic or when it's repeated.
So do we have some control then over our stress levels, how we perceive our stress? Are there exercises that we can do to eliminate some of the stress?
Absolutely. There are many things that we can do to essentially stress-proof our brains. Exercise, for instance, is a huge one. And this doesn't just mean when you're feeling stressed to go jump on that treadmill. If you are on that treadmill beforehand and for a certain period of time, aerobic exercise, the CDC recommends 150 minutes a week, you're actually stress-proofing your brain. You're making it hardier. So when you perceive a stressful situation, it doesn't seem to be as much of a threat. Instead, it can seem to be a challenge. There are other things that we can do. Social support is a huge way to reduce stress, and it actually changes your brain as well.
What about what we eat? Does that have an effect?
What we eat does have an effect. Now, there aren't a lot of absolute foods out there that reduce stress, although a study that was done at Penn State University shows that pistachio nuts in moderation can actually reduce our blood vessels response to stressors.
And I'm guessing sleep is a big one.
Sleep is a huge one. Sleep deprivation is used as a torture technique because not getting enough sleep is so stressful.
So bottom line, since we're running out of time, have a few pistachio nuts, get a lot of sleep, meet with your girlfriends once a week to chat it out, and exercise.
Meditate a little or go for a mindful walk. Slow down how you're eating. It's not just what you eat, it's how you eat that can make a huge difference in what happens with your stress hormones.
Thank you so much. That was fascinating stuff. And for more information on stress and aging, check out Stress Less by Thea Singer.